Hello, welcome to The Mum Show. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to be exploring the impact of shame on our children. So grab yourselves a cup of tea, make yourself comfortable, and let's start the show. And welcome to another episode of The Mum Show. My name's Marina and I'm here in the kitchen again with play therapist Emma Browne and Pastor Clare Hooper. And today we're going to be exploring the impact that shame has on our children and how we can cultivate a good environment for our kids to grow up in. There we go. Oh, I like that mutual.
I love this topic. I've been really looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting one to explore because it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because there's an element of cultural shame that we absolutely want to stay away from, and we do not want to bring shame on our kids. And yet there is a path they have to walk, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes the word shame conjures up so much negativity that we lose sight of the fact that actually shame in some ways is quite a normal stage in a child's development.
Interesting.
It happens usually around about the toddler years. And it's about I suppose it's about that recognition that babies get to and young children get to when they suddenly realise that they can control their behaviour and their behaviour has an impact. And that experience of feeling shame, feeling self-conscious is really important because that's how they start to learn to self-regulate. Yeah. That's how they start to learn to, when we've talked, I think, before about the prefrontal cortex clutch, which is a bit of a mouthful, but basically it's that ability to shift gears from that kind of chaotic red zone part of the brain back to that calm, okay, let's do this, I know what I need to do and I need to do it right. It's a really important part of that development within that stage of childhood.
You see it, don't you? When they're little, you see them flip that switch from being more self-aware. Is that the part you're talking about? So, especially with, I'm just going to say it.
Go there,
I'm just going to go there, especially when maybe they go behind the sofa to have a number two, or
it's really interesting because it coincides with toilet training. That's it's really part of that because they have to they suddenly experience that going to the toilet perhaps isn't socially acceptable.
Isn't that amazing though? You notice them suddenly appear or disappear, and then you're like, I think they've gone. I think they've gone.
So is that a reaction? Is that a reaction to the environment because people, grown-ups, don't poo in the middle of the living room or behind the sofa? Or is that a natural, hang on, this doesn't feel right?
No, I think it's pretty much a reaction to the environment, but it happens at the stage that the brain is ready to be much more aware. And I guess for children, it's that sense of, I can control my behaviour. So I can continue to choose to do something and get a reaction, or I can curb my behaviour and learn to control it a little bit more. And I guess with that whole bodily function of, can I hold on? Can I let it go? Can I control my bodily functions? It all kind of fits in with the same stage of development, but it's really important.
So this would fit really well for when my little girl was. She was still in a cot, so she was under 2 at least, and she'd snuck off into her bedroom and taken a bag with her, and I hadn't really noticed. I've got 2 other children and busy, you know what I mean? Don't judge me, okay? She was old enough to go off on her own. And I suddenly smelt like this overwhelming sense of nail varnish.
No.
So nail varnish, and I went upstairs and I just followed the scent of it. Anyway, she climbed into her cot with my nail polish bag, and she'd obviously started on her toes, where she coated her whole body in a really nice, one of my favourite red nail polishes.
Oh my goodness!
All over her body. She'd obviously tried to do her fingers and her toes, but it must have just felt so good.
Oh wow, yeah.
And she was like that. The look on her face,
so it's a recognition.
she knew exactly, and she'd done it sneak. She'd she'd taken it. She wasn't 2.
Yeah,
Is that the same sort of thing you're talking about?
So it's an uncomfortable feeling. We've all experienced that ourselves, but it's really important that they experience that discomfort because that's their brain's kind of, okay, maybe I need to do something different, or maybe I need to stop this behaviour to do something different.
So it's like what we would refer to as well as guilt. It's like is it just like when you go to that place where you go,
I think guilt comes a little bit later.
Okay,
Guilt's
so
a little bit of a
that's-
higher order. This is a very very early stage in that
It's quite
development.
primal, is it?
Yeah, it does feel like it comes a lot earlier. And I think what's really important is how we as parents respond to our children
absolutely.
in those moments. That's the key, because I
You're
guess...
feeling guilty over there,
No,
Claire.
I've just got another story. I'm just...
Do you want to tell your story? Go for it.
So, I mean, I don't know whether you've experienced this, but yeah, when these things happen and it's slightly embarrassing and you have an opportunity to make your child feel okay in these situations.
Absolutely.
It's difficult. And so we're in the bathroom and my child scoops up from the bath what I think is a pile of foam. And it's not, it's a pleasant gift of something else wrapped up in foam, something, another number 2, shall we? And in that moment, I have the option to go, what is that? Or I just go, oh, thank you very much, I'll put that in the toilet. So not then making them feel like,
Because I guess in those moments, you can imagine, can't you, what that child would experience.
Yeah.
If was it Gracie again?
Oh, I'm not telling you.
Okay.
I am not going to disclose
Right,
which child it was.
Whichever child it was, I guess if they had that experience from you of, what are you doing? That's disgusting. What are you doing with that? Take it away from me.
Yeah.
That experience of shame then becomes something quite toxic for them. And it's okay to have a one-off experience, but when we repeatedly, I suppose, face our children within those experiences like that, it can be really, really damaging. Whereas actually what you were doing was you recognised, I need to be really careful how I do this. I need to gently try and let him or her know that this probably isn't the most kind of sensible thing to do, but I'm not going to make you feel any worse in it. Totally. It's really important.
And when you find yourself in that environment, like when you've got a 2-year-old and you're already tired and everything's already pressured and they hand you a delicate, not very nice thing, or if you're in the supermarket and they have a big meltdown and everyone's watching you, or they're on the bus, and in fact I had this with my daughter. I was on the bus and she was crying and she was upset and everybody around her was tutting, and this guy just went crazy and he was just like, you make that baby be quiet, you do this, you do that. And when you're in that environment, actually, it's really hard to make that priority your child's experience of how you dealt with it rather than everybody else around you.
But that's when your own sense of shame comes into it, doesn't it? And I think it's a really, really good example. I've experienced that, and I'm sure all of us as parents, particularly the supermarket shop with a toddler, it's really, really difficult, isn't it? So you've got all these things going on, your child is having a complete meltdown, and everybody is watching. Everybody is watching, what are you going to do, Mum? What are you going to do to manage this situation? So it's really difficult to stay empathically attuned to your child in those moments, because you yourself have been triggered. You're experiencing that sense of shame. And it's really, really difficult. It's really difficult, isn't it?
It's quite physical, isn't it, as well, sometimes, that when you feel shame, triggers all sorts of other physical things in you.
It does, it does.
I think it triggers a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what to do with it and you don't know where to go with that, and it's kind of like, oh, hang on a second, I'm completely out of control, and it's so chaotic, isn't it?
I mean, the two things that I feel like shame, I suppose, defines really is a sense of being separated, so of being alone in something. Oh my goodness, I've done this thing and whoever I'm with is not happy with me. So it's this absolute sense of feeling completely separate and feeling not good enough. So I've done something and I'm defective. There's something wrong with me. And that's when that shame that is normal, depending on how we respond to it, can become really, really toxic, because nobody likes that feeling. And people, as they grow, if those experiences continue, as we grow, we will, and our children, find ways to avoid that feeling of shame. And often it can be either huge avoidance, so a fear of, if I try and do this, I might get this wrong, and therefore I'm going to feel shame. So I'm going to just avoid it. Be the easiest thing just to avoid it. And sometimes
I've
that
definitely found
avoidance
myself there.
can
Yeah.
manifest itself, particularly in the classroom, for example, with kind of children finding other distractions, so kind of getting involved with a bit of, you know, mischief, or a bit of, you know, kind of, you know, difficult behaviour, because it's an easier thing to do than to stay and try and do this thing that they might fail at. So
Feels like it lightens the mood for you, doesn't it? You feel if you find alternative ways, so you don't have to face what that is.
Distraction.
Yeah.
as well.
Or it's at least if I mess around, or at least if I do something wrong, my peers will respect me. The teacher's never going to like me anyway, or the person in authority is never going to like me because I'm not good enough, because I can't do this. So I may as well entertain someone. I may as well be accepted by someone. And it's such it can really impact our kids as they grow, can't it? I mean, it can just stunt them and freeze them into position. And I think what amazes me all the time is that actually this is something we carry so much as adults. You know, we can carry that sense of shame. And then it can limit your relationships, and it can limit what you go on to do in your life, your vision, your dreaming, and ultimately it can limit your relationship with God.
Yeah, definitely. It creates a separation, because, you know, you find yourself in worship and you will go to respond, and I don't know if you've ever found that, and then all of a sudden you remember something you did wrong. I mean, that's so the enemy. And you'd go to reach out for worship, and then you go, oh no, because I can't, I'm not worthy. And it becomes, unless you break through and remember what God says about you in those moments, and keep applying those truths to your life, you let the enemy get a foothold in your life, and shame becomes something that you live under, not under God's grace.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the enemy does, that separation that you were saying. It's to separate and to isolate, and we need to know, we need the knowledge of our salvation to be able to stay free. We need to know exactly what Christ has done with that. So it's such a powerful thing.
It is.
I'm really looking forward to exploring how we can prevent creating that culture in our homes. But before we go there, I really want to hear from our kids, okay?
Yes.
Let's have a look at what the kids have to say.
And action.
What things do you love about you?
That I'm my own self. That you're the greatest lily I've ever met. The things I love about myself are love, and because everyone works differently, I have my own kind of brain and my own kind of style and personality to anybody else in the world.
Do you think everyone loves themselves?
No, because we're all different and we don't know their things. People don't really feel like they love themselves, because if you've done something bad and you got told off, you might feel like it was your own body self, so then you might not think that your body wants you to be nice, so you might think that it wants you to be bad and get told off all the time.
What makes people feel bad about themselves?
People feel bad about themselves for doing something wrong that they weren't supposed to do. Sometimes when I lie, I feel really bad. I feel bad when I take something without asking, or someone saying no, that I can't take it.
What words can people say that make you feel good about yourself?
When people say, you're the best, it makes me feel really glad, because sometimes I feel like no one wants me anymore, so when people say you're the best, it makes me feel like they know that it's been really hard sometimes, because I always have fallouts with my friends at school.
When you fall out with your friends at school, how does it make you feel about yourself?
It makes me feel really sad. It makes me feel like I just want to move school. We sometimes don't make friends, and we sometimes do. Sometimes when people say unkind things to me, it makes me feel bad about myself, and it makes me believe them about what they say. Sometimes you can feel really sad, and it might go on for a long time. Then sometimes you can feel really glad, and it can make you feel really happy about yourself.
What could you say to somebody to help them know that God loves them and that all is good?
Sometimes when you speak to God, it takes a long while to heal. And sometimes God heals your heart. So when your heart is healed, He heals your body. And then you forget about all that stuff. And it's in the past and you forget about it.
I found that really interesting. You were mentioning about how they have that sense of shame within them that feels like they have physically done something wrong. And when Ariella described it, she said, I feel like it's my own body self that's gone bad and my own body doesn't want me. And it's like she's trying to understand that and navigate through that a little bit.
Trying to create a language around it, isn't she?
Yeah, but a good example of a child where that prefrontal cortex clutch, that ability for her to recognise that feeling and shift a little bit, kind of recognise, oh, this doesn't feel right, something's not going, doesn't feel right with what I'm doing, maybe I need to do something different. But it's that tuning in, isn't it? It's that kind of awareness that she had of what was going on inside her body that has probably helped her then try something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great to see them articulate how shame makes them feel like they don't belong. They talked a lot about how they feel with their friends and when they don't fit, and then this creates isolation, which again, God's plan was for us to be in community. And although it's something He gave us to help us, as human beings do, we tend to take those things, and unless we have God at the centre of our choices and our belief system, we tend to skew with things a little bit, don't we? And we say, okay, this thing that I did means I don't belong. This thing that I did, or this thing that this person did to me, means that I don't fit in. This thing means I'm not. Then you go, it's bit by bit by bit, it's changed the truth of what God says about you, and your feelings become your driver again. And actually, shame is one of those things that we have to get a handle on for ourselves, so we don't pass it on to our children, because they have to know in the home that they belong. You see this, what looks like, number 2 behind the sofa when they're a 2-year-old becomes then the choices that they make when they're a teenager. And if they can't come to you with that and know that you're a safe place, and they're going to heap shame on themselves for things that they do, things that they say, their friends say, not just choices in terms of what they watch or what they do, just the way they're treated. If they don't feel safe to come to you when they're a child, they're going to struggle to come to you when they're an adult. I mean, there's always a way back though, right?
Yes. I think it's really interesting as well, because they mentioned, both of them mentioned that they feel shame when they've done the wrong thing. And it's, when the enemy comes and accuses, he will actually call out things we have done wrong. He will call out sin. That's the truth of it. And as parents, we don't want to handle shame by going, no. You are amazing and beautiful and wonderful, and this is absolutely fine, because we're not actually dealing. That shame will come back up again, because the truth is that they've done something wrong. So we can't process misbehaviour by making out that they're these wonderful, perfect children. It's got to be more than that, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think kind of avoiding the shame is about how do we teach our children, how do we build skills within them to make those right choices in those moments that allow them to kind of experience for themselves that they can control their own emotions, they can control their own behaviours. So we have to put those boundaries in place. It's all about safety, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And that sense of security. Children need those boundaries, and they need to know where the limits are, and they need to know that if they do something wrong, that there's going to be a consequence. But that consequence, I believe, shouldn't just be kind of focused on punishment, because punishment, I feel, can absolutely make a child feel even more kind of in that sense of shame and separate, separate and not good enough. So we've got to find other ways of disciplining our children and helping and teaching them the right way, don't we?
I think Jesus has the best model of this, the story in the New Testament, where he is in a crowd and some people drag a woman to him that they found in the act of adultery. Already she must be feeling, I don't know whether she's clothed, and you don't fully know the story, but you can imagine that caught in an act of something like that, very personal moment anyway, caught in the act of adultery, brought before him, Jesus does something really telling. He just looks to the ground, he writes on the floor with no idea what he writes. He could be scribbling, he could be writing anything, but he does not look her in the eye to embarrass her. But he first of all, before he speaks to the woman, says to everybody else around, have you sinned? Are you able to? Are you without sin? Are you going to cast a stone at this woman? Who is that? And interestingly, do you know who move away the first? The older people, the mature, and they set the standard for how it should be, which I think it is with our children. Really important that we set the standard for that. Absolutely. And then the last thing he says to her is, because right with consequences, but he doesn't punish her, but he does say, go away and don't sin anymore.
Yeah.
So he tackles the fact that she did something that was not a good choice, but he does not make her feel bad for it.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, that is the picture of how to deal with these things. As much as sometimes our children do things that are like, we want to go, oh, that was like, the challenge is on for us. I don't think I've got that right all the time, which is why I don't think our kids can live shame-free. I don't know about you.
Absolutely.
No, I don't think
because our kids trigger those responses.
Yeah, they do.
Don't
Absolutely. And it is, I think we just need to try and put in some, I find, helpful building blocks that are just like, especially if there's repeated situations where you know this is going to come up, then how am I going to deal with this? I had a situation with my little boy who was in judo and he was loving it. He was absolutely loving it. And he has difficulties hearing and understanding, and it was a big loud noise and there was lots of other children around. And the judo instructor said to him, and the judo instructor actually had like really serious hearing issues, like powerful hearing aid, didn't pick up on everything. And he was really gentle with Reuben because he understood. And he said, Reuben, back in the square. And for Reuben, that sense of, he's called me out. He singled me out, absolute covered him in shame. Now, we couldn't avoid that. That guy was super gentle. That guy never intended that. He felt awful. He made Reuben the judo hero of the day, you know, and he was like, I understand, Reuben, I understand. And I don't think, I could never have protected him from that, but I had to choose really carefully how I was going to respond to it. And so I whipped him outside, he buried his head in my neck and he just wept. And he just could not move away from me. And I had other grown-ups coming over, Reuben, get back on, Reuben, this. And I just had to push everybody out the way. And I had to nestle in with him. And we just had to have a really quiet chat. And you know, he wouldn't look me in the eye. His head was there the whole time. And we had to really go through this and process through this and understand and separate himself from the shame. Because I think that's what we're talking about, what Jesus does. He separates the woman from her shame. Here's your act. You're not going to do that anymore. And this is you. And I had to separate his sense of shame, which I know wasn't justified. It wasn't about behaviour. But separate his sense of shame to who he was. So it wasn't his own body's self fault, in the words of Ariella. And then we were actually able to go back in. And he left judo in the end. He didn't keep going. But I made sure he had gone in for a few more sessions and gone to a positive place. So the choice was not, I'm so ashamed I can't walk back in again. But his choice was, actually, I can't hear a word they're saying. I'm going to try a new sport. But it's so important, isn't it? Like you were saying in that story, to find strategies, because we're not going to avoid it happening.
But I think that you've just named one of those strategies, Marina, because I think it is about separating out the behaviour from the person. I know, you know, as we get older and we kind of start to experience the concept of guilt when we do something wrong, and kind of that niggle, isn't there? Of, oh, this doesn't fit right, because it kind of doesn't, it causes separation between me and my relationship with God, and it's perhaps upsetting, you know, it's damaging to me, it's damaging to others. But actually, if we can teach our children from a really early age that it's not them that are bad, it's their behaviour, it's their choice that's the tricky thing, not them. So it's separating out, you know, the shame is, I am bad, you know, I am a bad person, and the guilt is, I did something wrong. And it's really important that we get those messages, and we don't label our children, what a stupid boy, why did you do that, you stupid boy, instead of saying, oh, that was a really tricky decision, that was a poor decision then to make that decision to hit your brother or whatever it is.
And so then reflecting back on it themselves. What do you think that was a good choice? So is it you're not shaming them, but they're, oh yeah, that was a bad choice.
Yeah.
Can kind of help.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and we've also talked before about empathic limit setting, which is kind of coming from a place of empathy. So really looking beyond, you know, all behaviour is communication. We need to really understand that, don't we?
Telling us something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So looking beyond the behaviour, what's driving it, and link to that. Help our children tune into themselves in those moments of, you know, it's frustration, and the frustration has then caused me to lash out at somebody. So it's, you know, I can see that you're really frustrated right now, but it is not okay to hit. It's really not okay to hit.
Yeah.
Let's think about what we can do to make this better. Let's think about how we can repair this situation together, and let me help you. But it is really not okay to hit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good wisdom.
Yeah.
But I love it because the empathy side of it. I mean, our fourth show host, because she's not here, Brene Browne, but we talk about her all the time. She's literally sat in the kitchen with us all the time. She says that the one of the first steps to helping somebody who's living with shame is to be empathetic, to understand why they feel like they feel, and it makes them feel safe enough to be able to lift some of that shame off their shoulders. The way, again, the community, the way that God's created us to live in community, in a sense of belonging with other people. We can help each other.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is really important as well is that actually I think as parents we sometimes inadvertently all think that we're being like it's harmless and playful. But we can tip into humiliating our children.
I
think we've got to be really careful about that, because actually, you know, it can be damaging. When we kind of even sometimes playfully, but you know, when we might talk about our child's behaviour in front of other people and they're in the room. It's just.
I remember someone sharing a story about me as a child and feeling so ashamed of myself because I didn't understand why it was funny. And everybody was laughing, but I wasn't at that level of understanding that humour. I look back at it as an adult and I go, oh yeah, that's hilarious. I would really find that funny. But because at the time my humour wasn't there, it was just, it was so painful to do that.
And it's knowing your children. My youngest is incredibly sensitive to that, and she's kind of nearly 10, so she's just about really understanding more adult type of kind of rules and subtleties and humour. But previously, we just could not talk about anything that she'd done with other people, no matter how funny and how, you know, those golden moments that we want to share with other people. But we just couldn't, because she just couldn't handle it. She just fell apart, bless her.
And then that's the rise of social media, the sharing generation, oversharing, and it's so sensitive. You just got to be really careful, like what you do, and making sure that you protect those relationships. I don't think I've always got that right. I try really hard. Do tell me if I overshare.
Well, to be honest with you, I find that now that I refer back to my kids more and more. Can I share this? Can I tell that funny story? Can I do that? And actually, often my daughter's like, yeah, go on. It's hilarious, you know, because she's quite out there. But there's loads that I know I just wouldn't even ask my son if that's okay to share. I wouldn't say to, you know, there's lots of things where I'll think he looks amazing and he's made something cute and he's, you know, gone into like Captain Underpants style or something. And he's like... And I think we have to be really respectful of that. I love what you've just said. We have to protect those relationships over everything else. And I think especially the culture that we're in today, we just have to be really aware. Am I humiliating my child? Do they understand what's happening at the moment? Am I telling this story to benefit them, or because I need affirmation or humour at the moment? And if we're bringing it back to ourselves, I think we have to question whether we should do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. But again, we're the first generation to be dealing with this,
Yes.
aren't we?
It entered the dictionary as a word officially, I think, last year. Sharenting.
Oh, sharenting. Oh my goodness, I've not heard that one.
We are going to end it there, but I suggest you go and Google it. Sharenting. Is it a thing or is it a Clare thing? We will find out very soon. In the meantime, we hope to see you next time on The Mum Show. Take care.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello. We're at forestcollective.co.uk.